Well, hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back. I hope you guys are doing wonderful out there. I've got an interesting video for you today. I've got my red binder again. That means we're going to be talking about Alone today. We're going to be talking about Season 8, Episode 7. This is Alone Grizzly Mountain, and the name of this episode is Surrounded. We have 5 people left. So we've got Coulter, Biko, Clay, Teresa, and Rose. So half the cast left. We're going to start with the quote that comes on the screen. It says, "In nature, there are neither rewards nor punishments. There are consequences." This is Robert Green Ingersoll. He was an American attorney and a writer who died in the late 1800s. So we're going to start this episode off. It's day 26, a little bit after noon. We are talking about Biko, and as we know, there are 5 people left. So he is making some dirt soup. So very interesting. He's got it in his pot. Apparently he heated up the water and the dirt, and he's drinking the nutrients out of the soil. Very smart if you think about it. And there's only kind of one thing that I might have done a little bit differently. I probably would have filtered that through some cloth or something to get rid of the debris and stuff. And he may have done that, I'm not sure. But then he goes off and he does a Gollum impersonation from Lord of the Rings, and he nails it. His Gollum impersonation is fantastic. I really like this guy's character, and I say this almost every episode. He's bringing us great television. So he decides that he wants to make a door for his shelter. So he makes kind of a drawbridge style of door that has snare wire connected to it, and it goes up, and then he can kind of pull it up and lower it down. Very, very smart. Very cool. And then this next part kind of touches home with me. He starts talking about his dad and how his dad is very close to him. His dad was very good to him. And the reason I say that touches me is because I grew up without a dad. So when I see Biko showing appreciation for his dad, it really touched me. It really does. He's showing appreciation for what he had. And then he also talks about if and when in his life he becomes a dad, that he wants to mirror the way his dad was with him. So he wants to be a good dad to his kids too. And that really touched me. It really did, because there's so many men out there that aren't good dads, and women for that nature. And there's so many of them out there that also are good people, that love their kids and things like that. So it's a testament to Biko's character, his personality, of the type of person that he is. He really wants to do good at being a dad, and I commend him for that. I give him tons of respect for that. So we're moving forward. We're still on day 26. It's a little bit after 4 o'clock. We're talking about Rose. She found a glass bottle. That is huge. This was the glass bottle that I found when I did my 5-day $5 series. This is a game changer. Something this simple. I made this little cottonwood cork for it, and that is the water that I filtered out there using a primitive filter that I made on that series. If you haven't seen that 5-day series, please check the playlists on my channel. It's called $5, 5 days, something like that. And I have a 10-day also if you're interested in stuff like that. But something that simple goes a long way. It blew me away, and it really touched me. She's making some rosehip tea, and then rosehip contains 50% more vitamin C than an orange. So crazy. And she's happy about the bottle, you know, and I can honestly relate to that, you know, just like I showed here. It's a game changer for your morale. Anything, any little thing like that that you can get or do or achieve, they're just small victories in this overall game, right? So she's happy. Just finding that container that she can put her rose hips in and make her tea in, just, it makes life so much easier. If you guys have not made a primitive container out in the woods, or maybe you're not used to drinking out of a cast iron Dutch oven or a pot or something like that, something like a bottle really does change your morale. I can swear by that. So she decides that she wants to go check her snares. She doesn't have anything in her snares, and she takes a good approach here. She says, I'm going to go set more. Very smart. This is the first time on this season of Alone that we've seen someone do snares, at least on the show. I don't know if other contestants might have had footage that didn't make the editing cuts to get put into the show. Maybe they were other snares out there. But this is the first time we've actually seen snares. So the whole time I've been watching this show, I've been wondering about that. How come nobody's setting any deadfalls? How come there's no snares out there? And now we see that Rose is doing snares. She's concerned about food, and she finds this next part was crazy. She's hiking around trying to set more snares, getting, you know, in an effort to get more calories into her body, and she sees a weird object kind of buried in the ground, and it's a piece of metal. And she's looking at this, and what do you know? She pulls it up, and what is it? It's a bear trap. A spring-loaded bear trap. Huge score. First thing that comes to my mind is, can she use that out there on the show? I really wonder that. So I'm just curious, can she use that? So we're moving forward to day 27. It's a little after 8:29 in the morning. We still have 5 people. We're talking about Biko. And this was interesting too. He says, I dreamed last night that my family was cooking this big old feast. And every time before I got to eat, I woke up. So I didn't even get to eat in my dreams. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So he decides that he's going to bring rocks up to his shelter and make a chimney or a fireplace. Very smart. And he had to go down the hill to the lake shore to get these rocks. All the rocks were down from his shelter. And then he talks about, I got to be careful with my ankle. And then he elaborates a little bit that he had ankle surgery in March. He said it's still kind of sore, so you know he's aware of this, and he says, I got to be careful. And then the next thing you know, he falls down. He slips and falls. Crazy. Moving forward about 11 o'clock, we're still talking about Biko here. He slips in the mud, but he didn't get hurt. But it's, of course, the show, soon as he falls and crashes, they go to commercial and everything else, and, you know, they love leaving us hanging. But when he slipped, this was actually a good thing, because when he slipped, he was showing the area that he slipped on, and he's aware now that that was actually clay that he slipped on. So it's like a light bulb comes off on Biko, and he's like, hey, I slipped right, because he was showing the camera the track of where he slipped, and then he's showing the clay, and now he's like, whoa, I could use clay on my chimney between the rocks. Very smart. Then he finds a Ziploc bag, and that was washed up on the shore. It's got holes in it, and he says he can use this to bring clay, you know, up to his shelter and stuff like that. And very interesting. And the thing about him slipping, on day 27, not that big of a deal. When I did my 5-day, within minutes of me starting that video, I slipped and fell down. I mean, things happen. I was out on the Little Colorado River. It was kind of dry, and there was some mud and clay out there, and I crashed too on day 1. So I don't take anything away from him at all. So we're moving forward. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock. 5 people left. We're talking about Coulter. He's out finding mushrooms, and he's stringing these mushrooms on a piece of snare wire, and he's making like a mushroom necklace. It was kind of funny. He's got a nice shelter, and he's hanging these mushrooms up to process, to dry, and it says that he processed over 30 pounds of mushrooms. Very crazy. Moving forward, day 28, 5 people left, 8:20 in the morning, talking about Rose. She said she had a rough night. She's thinking about home. She's thinking about her kids. She's going to go check out the beach. And I noticed there's snow on the ground. And she sees bear tracks everywhere. Then she sees a bear on the beach. And the bear sees her, and the bear approaches her. That would be scary. The bear is coming towards her. So she fires off her air horn. She fires off a bear banger. Very smart and very assertive in her tone, her voice. I mean, she was doing everything right in accordance to this bear. Moving forward, 9:27, we're still talking about Rose. The bear decides to leave, but it's actually circling around her. And she's got the radio in her hand. She's on the verge of tapping. And she's like, I don't know if I should tap or not. And she's really shook up. I could only imagine what she's probably experiencing. She's a small woman. I mean, you don't have to be a small person to be afraid of a bear. Even a 300-pound dude can be afraid of a bear. So, I mean, she's got this bear kind of circling her, almost like he's trying to hunt her. And that's got to be scary. There's no medic there. There's no, ambulance that you can call. So it does it'll heighten your sensitivity to how important this thing is, and she gathers herself though, after getting a little worked up. She gets herself together, and then she's back on her journey. And I was proud of her for not tapping. I was proud to see her gather herself. She got worked up, and she was aware of that, and then she gathered herself and brought herself back down. I was impressed. Moving forward, about 3:30, we're talking about Clay. Nice shelter, man. Nice shelter. He decides that he's going to make a decoy hat out of the deer head. They're used by Native Americans to calm animals, so that they could get closer in hunting applications and things like that. So he wants to honor the deer. And how does he honor the deer? By using every part of that deer that he can. So he's nipping and clipping, as we used to call it. I worked at a taxidermy shop for one summer. I wasn't a taxidermist, but I would skin animals. They would come in like elk, a bull or cow elk, and they pay me $20 an animal to skin these animals. But because I was working in a taxidermy shop, I saw what the taxidermies did, and they use that term nipping and clipping. And that's what he's doing. He's getting all the fat and everything off of around the nose and around ears of this hide off of the head of the deer. And then he's gonna stuff it full of moss. And he shows it, and it looks fantastic. For stuffing this thing full of moss, and then he talks about why you got to remove the fat from the skin, because the fat will go rancid and then it'll stink and stuff like that. So we're still talking about him, and he's got the head hanging on the wall inside of his shelter. Pretty cool. And then he decides he wants to use the brains from the deer skull to brain tan the hide. Very cool. Brain tanning's been done for centuries, and its origins can be traced back to the Stone Age. It's an interesting technique to brain tan a hide. And so he does that. We're moving forward. We're on day 30 now. It's about 8:40 in the morning. We have 5 people left still. We're talking about Coulter. 32 degrees outside, so that's freezing, and it's snowing. He says there's about 4 to 6 inches of snow outside on the ground. I think I'm going to insulate my shelter today. I thought that was funny. You know, you wait till there's snow on the ground, then I'm just busting his balls right here. I love Coulter, but I'm just giving him a hard time. You wait till there's snow on the ground, you're going to insulate your shelter. But he does, and he talks about the most important places to insulate is the roof. And that's very true. Heat loss through radiation, it'll go right out through that tarp. So he's laying down all kinds of boughs and stuff up there. He's doing a really good job. He insulates the door. He insulates the roof. He gets it, as he puts it, 95% done, and it looks fantastic. It looks like a very, very good shelter. I noticed that his shelter had a lot of rock on it, so he used a natural rock foundation as one of the walls. I was impressed by that because if he has a fire in there, it's going to warm that rock up and it's going to radiate heat in the shelter all night long. So very, very smart on Coulter's part. Moving forward, 9:23 in the morning, we're talking about Teresa. She decides she's going to go gather wild edibles before the snow gets too bad. She said fishing is hard. She finds some bearberries and she's collecting those. She's digging roots. Solomon's sill, because the leaf resembles the royal seal of King Solomon. That's why they call it that. She decides to go back to her shelter. It's snowing and she's not exactly sure where she's at. She gets a little bit worked up. She's lost. And she does the same thing Rose did. She kind of brings herself back down. She starts to think. My first reaction when she was saying she was lost was, why don't you just follow your tracks that you know, just follow the way you came. Look for tracks and follow them. And she really does. She starts to do that. She starts to find her way back. About 4:30 now, she remembered things on the way, things that I refer to as landmarks, maybe a broken tree, maybe a patch of trees or a certain shrub or something like that. Landmarks, anything that you can mentally make a note of, you know, a tree that's leaning or anything. And so she's looking at these landmarks, and she has collected a pretty good amount of food, but she mentions that the amount of food that she collected is probably barely going to be enough to replace the calories that she just burnt going out and collecting it. So we're moving forward, about 3:45, talking about Coulter. He's eating cranberries, and then he decides he wants to go out in his boat. He wants to fish. So he checks his fish trap. There's nothing in the fish trap. That's got to be frustrating, you know. So he decides he's going to do some regular fishing. Nothing in the trap, so he's got a backup plan. He's going to cast a line. He catches a fish. He puts the line right back in the water, catches a second one. They're small fish, 2 rainbow trout, probably 6 to 10 inches long, maybe something like that. And they're about 100 calories a piece, but anything that you can get is an addition. You know, it doesn't matter if it's 10 calories. Everything that you put into your body is a deposit, no matter how big or small that deposit is. So we're moving forward, day 31, 2:30 in the morning. We're talking about Clay, and he's in his shelter. He hears something outside, and he kind of gets up and he walks around outside and he's looking around, and it's so hard for him to see with this little headlamp that they give him. It's a very floody beam, so it doesn't have a long distance of throw. And he's having a hard time seeing what's out there, but he knows there's something out there. And then he decides he's going to go back to bed. And then I'm screaming in my head, why didn't you go check your smoker, your food, your cache? Why didn't you go check that? It's driving me bonkers. But he doesn't. So he goes to bed. He wakes up 7:30 in the morning. He said he didn't sleep very much. Gets up. He sees all kinds of bear tracks in the snow. And he's telling us that they're black bear tracks. If you were to put a straight line, it would cut the little toe off. And that's, I guess, an indication that you can use to determine if it's a grizzly or a black bear. I didn't know that. Very smart. So he decides that he's going to go check the cache, and there's tracks everywhere. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, your cache got robbed in the night. I'm so frustrated for him. But he gets to the cache and everything's fine. And he was surprised that the bear came so close between his shelter and his cache, so close to the cache, and didn't pick up on the scent of it. And that just goes to show that maybe because the meat is smoked now, it's sealed and it's not producing much of a scent. So he got lucky, and he says these bears are going to be back. So very, very interesting shots there with Clay. We're moving forward. It's a little bit after 11. We're talking about Rose. She also didn't have a very good night of sleep. She said she's going to change her mindset. That is so smart when people refer to that. You know, it's like they're pushing the reset button. When their awareness is like, oh, I'm not doing too good, or my mind's slipping, or I'm having a hard... Just her saying, I'm going to change my mindset and hit that reset button. I give her tons of respect for that. So she decides that she's going to go check her snares. Guess what? She has a rabbit. It's a snowshoe hare in the snare. Very, very cool. Very cool. She gets to eat some meat now. She decides that she's going to eat the heart. The heart's dense in nutrients and it's rich in vitamins, which can reduce anxiety and depression. Very, very interesting. She's happy, and I'm happy for her. That's a huge score. Again, like I said, every little bit that you put in is a deposit. Moving forward, we're still on day 31, little after 3:30, 5 people left. We're talking about Clay again, 38 degrees outside. He talks about that it's a little bit warmer than it has been. Snow's melted. He decides he wants to rig up some trip lines and put an air horn so it's an alarm system. If the bears get too close to the cache, it's going to make the air horn go off. And he tests it and it works. I mean, he walks right into the paracord and brrr, you can hear the air horn. And I'm just loving the way Clay is being, you know, he's thinking and he's finding these challenges and he's overcoming them. He's very adaptive to the situation that he's in. And I really like the fact that he's not just adapting, but he's overcoming and he's also staying very busy. Much respect to Clay for just keeping it busy out there. He's keeping his mind occupied. It's keeping him busy so his mind isn't wandering to other places, like maybe thinking about his boys, maybe thinking about his wife, because he's staying active in his tasks out there. Moving forward, day 32, 9:40 in the morning, we're talking about Clay. He's rationing his deer meat. He's given himself about 2 ounces of meat with fat per day. That's about 140 calories. Even though it's an intake, he's still at a deficit because for him to maintain his body weight, he needs about 2,000 calories a day. So he decides he's going to go fishing in an effort to get some fish, and he has no luck. And he does. He talks about how fishing out there can be discouraging. When you fail over and over and over and over, day after day after day, and he mentions this, that this could be discouraging, but he's still out there. I give him an A for effort because he's still trying. Much respect. He is not a quitter. Tons of respect for Clay. He didn't get any fish. Moving forward, 11:30, talking about Teresa. She decides that she's going to make a raft out of wood for fishing. She wants to go out. She wants to set a trout line that can be reeled in and set back out. Very smart idea. She's going to get in the cold water. Now remember with Clay, earlier it was 38 degrees outside. And that's, if you want to look at Teresa, she really did pick the best day to do this. The temperatures are the best on this day to do that. And about 3 o'clock, here she goes. She's got her little raft. She's basically in shorts, nothing, just shorts. And she's got her float coat on and her jacket or whatever. And she says the water's cold. She's going to go out and set her trout line. Then her float coat accidentally deploys. It puffs up. We used to have those in the Navy. And it was funny because we would run around and pull our friends would pull theirs and it'd puff up. and they get all mad at us. It was like a game that we played in the Navy. So for some reason her float coat deployed. That's got to be so frustrating. It did it on its own. She didn't do it. She's talking about the water's cold. She's talking about that everything's tangled. The rope was wrapped around her foot. She had to take her shoe off and all this stuff. The water was cold. Moving forward, it's about 3:30, 35 degrees outside. She's been in the water about 35 minutes. She did everything right prior to going out there. She made a fire on the beach. She had her warm clothing there. She had everything that she could do that was correct, she did prior to getting in that water. So I give her much respect to that. She said, now she's out of the water, and she says her ears are ringing. She can't hear things, and cold water, it constricts your blood vessels, and it makes things harder because you have increased blood pressure. Very crazy. She decides she's going to put her clothes on. She says, I'm not sure if I'm okay. Her body's core temperature has gotten pretty cold. And the bad part about that, and when it comes to hypothermia, is even though you're out of the water, and even though you might even have clothing on, your body's core temperature can still continue to decline. And so she's kind of concerned. And I'm concerned watching, because I'm thinking, this could lead to a tap out. She's shaking, uncontrollably shaking. It's classic hypothermia. You can see it all over her. One thing I noticed that was incorrect, and I'm not knocking her, I might have made the same mistake, but I noticed that even though she did everything right, her fire was right on the beach, and it was wind. There was convective air flowing through there. So it might have helped if she could have had that fire in an area where there's, tree coverage or something where there's not wind. Wind is a heat loss mechanism, and it can really hit you. So she's having a hard time talking. Again, it's classic hypothermia, and I'm concerned for her. Moving forward, day 32, 8 o'clock at night, talking about Teresa. She shows her thighs, and there's red marks on her skin. She has first-degree burns. She was so cold that she had to get that close to the fire to warm herself up in an effort to keep herself warm. She just got too close to the fire. And then she says something, and I'm going to quote her here. She says, "There's nothing in the world that makes you feel more alive than almost not being." That's crazy. She had to take her shoe off to get back to the shore. Remember, she was tangled and all this, and she just got too cold. And she says, and I'm quoting her again, "All I ever have to do is push the red button and someone comes to save me. They asked me if I ever felt like this was life and death. And I kind of lied to them and said, no, of course not. Today I did." Wow, that's crazy. So she didn't tap. We still have 5 people left at the end of this episode. And that was a fantastic episode. It was good. I love it when we're getting into this point, because the show really starts getting good when you really start seeing people struggle. And then they give us a glimpse of next week's episode. It looks like Coulter's in the boat, and he's like standing up in the boat, and it kind of makes you wonder if he's going to fall in the water. And then it talks about Biko a little bit. These are just real short snippets that it shows us. Biko apparently has a mouse in his shelter, and he's throwing something at it. Teresa shows one of her toes, and it's like swollen and red. And then Clay, it looks like there's a lot of snow on the ground, and he has a pretty good bear encounter possibly. So I'm not sure. I'm just very excited. They leave us with these nail biters and these cliffhangers. I'm so excited for next week's episode. Like I say, the show's getting good. If you like the commentary that I'm doing, please drop comments in the comment section. I love reading them. I love hearing what your guys' thoughts are. Again, if you want to see my 5-day experience, just check that playlist. I'll try to drop a link to this in the description box so you can go check it out. Maybe the 5-day and the 10-day. I would appreciate the views if you guys want to go check those out. It helps me out. Those were great experiences that I've had. And with all that being said, folks, again, thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next week. I love you all. Bye for now.